You're not going to grow by studying the Bible.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to the teaching series, The Jesus That John Knew. I'm so glad you've joined me as we really are now starting to press in and get into the real heart of the mystery of John's Gospel. This series is called The Jesus That John Knew, and I hope you've already begun to see that the Jesus that John knew is perhaps rather different from the Jesus that you and I are used to being seen and hearing about through the Gospels. This is a very different Jesus. This is a Jesus who is the Jesus of the mystery. And I'm thrilled to be able to share more and more of that mystery with you. Last time we were talking about this business of the prayer of faith, and Jesus has really ramped things up. It's coming to the end of his earthly ministry, and of course, as you all remember, ever since that moment where Judas went out from amongst them, Jesus has become altogether more open, more intimate with them about the mystery of the Spirit and about this mystery of oneness. And of course, we're on the verge of John chapter 15, where we're going to be able to literally explode the whole concept of what it means to be in Christ, and I can scarcely wait to get you to that teaching. But we have important business to take care of before we get there. We're in John 14, and I want you to have a look at verse 15 with me, and we'll resume our teaching there. In John 14 and verse 15, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." You know, please learn to listen with the ears of grace. Don't, when you hear these things, think about law and 10 commandments don't get caught up in all of that, because the commandment of Jesus is love, 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 love. Remember that when we were under the law, when we were under bondage to the law, we would very much tend to think of the commandments and the laws and the traditions very much as a threat. But you now surely under grace cannot hear the commandments as a threat, but you hear them as a promise. Once upon a time you would hear the commandments as thou shalt not, or else. Now you can hear the commandments as saying thou shalt not, because it's not who you are. You're not an adulterer, you're not a coveter, and so on and so forth. You're not a murderer. You are the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. And so Jesus says, look, if you will keep my commandments. And what is my commandments? That you love your neighbour. Remember that you are the keeper of the commandments, and that's such a much bigger point than some kind of this thinking that we've got into, that love is a results-orientated business, that if we keep commandments, if we keep to the rules, if we stick to the guidelines, then God will love us. No, you're the keeper of the commandments. You're the custodian of the commandments. The commandment that is love. The love resides in you. And I will ask of the Father, Jesus says, and he will give you another helper. Well, now this is an important point. Jesus is going to be literally, from their point of view, ripped from them, and they're not going to view this as good news, but Jesus is going to say, no, this is very, very good news. You're not going to be able to see it yet, but in a while you'll see it. But if you keep my commandments, I will ask of the Father, and he will send you another helper. And that word is another comforter, and I want to talk about that because it's very important. To be with you forever. Even the Spirit of truth, to whom the world cannot receive, Jesus says. The world cannot receive this Spirit. Why? Because he neither sees him or knows him. You know him, for he dwells with you and will be in you. Well, we are, as I've said, in the midst of it. The world cannot receive it. Why? The world cannot receive the Spirit. Now, let's just be clear about something. But this is not something that's going to come from the outside onto the inside. This is something that's on the inside that works its way onto the outside. But the world has no capacity to engage. The world has no capacity to interact. But why? Because, you see, it doesn't either see Jesus or know Jesus. The seeing is a piece that's talking about this, to view something mentally. And the perception is about, the knowing is this perception, this deep inner knowing. And what Jesus is saying is the outward world cannot perceive what is inward. The computer company Hewlett-Packard, I can't remember whether it was Mr. Hewlett or Mr. Packard, but one of them said, if only we knew what we knew. But the point of the matter is we don't know what we don't know. And the fact is that inside each and every one of us, the repository that is mankind, inside each of us is the Spirit of the living God. But we don't see it and we don't know it. And therefore we function as outward people, completely, spectacularly missing the point of what it is. And Jesus says, look, I'm telling you, I won't leave you as orphans, but I will come to you. And so there's this sense that they're going to be bereft, they're going to be made bereft of Jesus. And he said, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you as orphans, but yet in a little while I will come to you. You'll see me no more, but then you will see me. Well, hang on, just let me part this, because there's a lot here that I've got to unpack for you. Let me do the easy bit first. Yet in a little while, and the world will see me no more, but you will see me. Now let's just hear that, because Jesus is saying the physical Jesus, the Jesus that you understand as flesh and blood, is being removed, and the world will not see that Jesus anymore, because that Jesus is being taken out of the world. But you will see me. My goodness, one of the send the chill through your spine moments in the movie Avatar is when you have that wonderful line, I see you, I see you. And let me tell you something, when Jesus has been physically removed from the earth in terms of the carpenter's son that you and I identify with and recognize in the nativity stories and the stories of the gospel, the world will see me no more, but you will see me. You will see me in all things, in all men, in all situations, because I am the all in all. And once you have renewed eyes, once you've moved over, once we've crossed over into this new realm that we're going to be talking about, you will see me. You'll see me in everything. You'll see me in everyone. There's not a situation, not a circumstance in which you will not see me. You will see me, Jesus says. And I promise you this, I will not leave you as orphans. Oh, this is a magnificent statement. Now, you've got to understand something. For someone like me to read a statement like that, my God, what manner of love is this? Some of you will know, some of you won't know, that I was raised as an orphan. I was abandoned by my mother. And I don't know either my mother or my father. And so when I read in Scripture that he will not leave me as an orphan, that stirs something, that speaks to something deep within me. May I say that I am a physical and natural orphan, an orphan as one who has been bereaved of my father and my mother, one who has been deprived of my parents. That makes me an orphan in the natural. Maybe as you're listening to this broadcast, you too are an orphan in the natural. But here's one thing I'm prepared to wager on. We are probably both orphans in the spiritual. An orphan is someone who's been deprived of their parents, raised in an alien environment. And let me tell you something. Every single one of us has been deprived of our real father. Our real father is no longer in Jesus. The mythology that's been created around God and the mythology you've created around yourself needs to be shed, needs to be changed, because our Father is God. And the word orphan literally means comfortless. And Jesus is saying, I will not leave you comfortless. I promise you, Jesus says, I will not leave you as an orphan. You know, the root word orphan, it's a strong word. It means an orphan is one of uncertain affinity. Maybe you don't understand today as you're just watching this broadcast with whom you have an affinity. You have uncertain affinity. You're not certain whether or not, as I wasn't as a child, why did my mother leave me? Why did my mother abandon me? Why doesn't my father care about me? Who do I belong to? Where am I from? Where am I going? Why am I here? What am I doing here? Why doesn't anybody love me? What can I do about it? How can I make people love me? How can I stop people from leaving me? I was of uncertain affinity. To whom can I belong? Which gang can I run with? Which crowd can I fall in with? And the orphan is one of uncertain affinity. And my friend, let me tell you something, there are so many spiritual orphans, people of uncertain affinity. And Jesus says, I'm going to be very clear about this, I'm not going to leave you as orphans. None of you will be of uncertain affinity. I will be your parent. I am your teacher. I am your guide. I am your guardian, says Jesus. I won't leave you as orphans. I won't leave you cut adrift. I won't leave you comfortless. The Bible screams through the ages of the demand to take care of the orphans. The book of Deuteronomy, the Bible has a great deal to say on our behalf. In the book of Deuteronomy, The Lord himself declares that he executes justice for the fatherless and for the widow, and he loves the foreigner. God himself executes justice on behalf of the orphan. I don't know whether you're going to be able to get hold of this. I was raised as an orphan. Are you telling me that God executes justice on my behalf, and on behalf of the widow, on behalf of the foreigner? Do you realize what that means? This little triumvirate, orphans, widows, and foreigners. God himself executes justice on our behalf. He gives us food and he gives us clothing. It reminds me of the Beatitudes. Even Solomon, in all his splendor, wasn't dressed like one of these. My God. The psalmist declares, defend the poor and the fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and the needy. These days in my professional life, I'm involved in social justice issues. We talk a lot about social mobility. We talk a lot about the notion that social mobility means that your birth shouldn't determine your destination. And let me tell you something, the Bible is the greatest book of social mobility that was ever written. Social mobility, elevation, opportunity for people, orphans and the abandoned, the comfortless and the destitute, the outcast and the put out. Let me tell you something. When you read these stories and you see stories of the orphans like Esther, whose name was Myrtle, and the Lord breathed his life upon her and she became Esther the star. Or you read the story of Mephibosheth and you begin to understand something about the orphan nature. Or Lot, another one of the orphans. The stories go on and on and on about how God raises them and protects them and takes care of them in the midst of all their circumstances. It's such a beautiful truth. But we orphans, whether we're spiritual orphans or whether we're physical orphans, we have to wrestle with this orphan spirit that sits within us, because we're the ones that need to be comforted. We're the ones that have been in want, have been in distress. We cry out for it. And the unspoken goal of the orphan is we just want to be loved and to be accepted. All our internal conversations turn to the idea of, if we can just achieve more, if we could just look better, then we'd be loved. I tell you something, I will not leave you as orphans. What a legacy Jesus leaves over the church. I will not leave you as orphans. Do you know who the father of all the orphans is? His name is Melchizedek, the high priestly father of all orphans. He with no genealogy, no father and no mother. And Jesus himself in the book of Hebrews is the priest in the order of Melchizedek. The orphan's God. The God of the orphan. And to the God of the orphan, the book of Isaiah speaks to us. A king will reign in righteousness. The king will reign in righteousness, and princes will rule in justice. Each will be like a hiding place from the wind, Isaiah said, and shelter from the storm, like streams in a dry place, like the shade in a great rock in a weary land. The eyes of those who've seen will not be closed, and the ears of those he will give attention to. And the Bible talks in the book of Isaiah, in that 32nd chapter, how this Spirit will be poured out from on high, and the wilderness will become a fruitful field, and the fruitful field will be deemed a forest. That's you, that's me, that's the spiritual orphan. And then justice will dwell in the wilderness, and the righteous will abide in a fruitful field. And the effect of righteousness will be peace, and the result of peace, and the result of righteousness, quietness and trust. Quietness and trust forever. And my people, the orphan people, will abide in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. Oh, praise Jesus. That's our destiny, that's our hope, that's to whence we will go. Not in heaven, but here on the earth. It's not a hope that's deferred for heaven. It's a hope that's meant for us here on the earth. I will not leave you as orphans. Oh, my friend, but this comes back to his point. If you keep my commandments, if you believe in me, because there's this requirement, there's this, not so much requirement, there's this, I don't even know what to call it, not a condition so much, but it's I guess it is, because what he's saying is, look, understand something. You can't move in the dimensions of the Spirit. You can't move in the realm of the Spirit as long as you think and act like an orphan. You see, orphans transact for love, but fathers transform with love. You can't live and function as a son as long as you think and behave like an orphan. It's such a dramatic subject. A subject that I'm going to get into in a different context, because this is kind of like, I could park here for such a long time, but please understand something. The key to moving into the spirit realm is moving beyond the realm of the thinking, the mentality, the mindset of the orphan. The mindset of the orphan is one who feels as though they've abandoned, one who feels as though they're just comfortless, one who senses that want, senses that cheerlessness. No, that's not who we are anymore. We will not be left as orphans. The absolute unequivocal promise from God is that we are those upon whom the Spirit has been poured out from on high. We are those to whom the wilderness of our lives has become a fruitful field. We are those who are deemed a forest, those like Esther that I told you about, ones that have been abandoned and crushed and put down, but God raises them up, raised that woman up to become the queen. Look at the story of Mephibosheth, another orphan hiding away from himself, and yet he's brought into the very palace of King David. He refers to himself as no more than a dirty, desperate dog. But what does David do? David brings him up and places him on the throne of God. Oh my goodness. The promise, the promise, the promise. And Jesus is speaking this to them. He says, look, believe me, I am the Melchizedek. I am the father of the orphans. I am the Melchizedek, the great high priest. And I am the Prince of Peace and the Prince of Righteousness, and the result of righteousness is quietness and trust. You needn't fear, you needn't worry, you needn't stress yourself, you needn't be anxious about anything, but be in quietness and be in trust. And my people, my orphan, my formerly orphaned people, will abide in a peaceful habitation, and in secure dwellings they will find quiet resting places. I will not leave you as orphans. But if I go, I will send another comforter. Another comforter, Jesus says. And he will be with you forever. That's the promise. That's the promise. Yet a while, and the world will see me no more. But you will see me. Because I will arise with healing in my wings. I am the father of the orphans. Because I live, you will also live, Jesus said in John 20. In that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him, and I will make myself manifest in him.
You need to understand something about the gospel, and the gospel is that God gathers in the outcasts. The more messed up you are, the more God says, you know what you'll do for me. And the reason why these little children in the spirit are such powerful people is because they know the Father. And they know something about the Father that is so powerful. They know his love. Little children, I write to you because you know the Father. And if you know the Father, here's what you know. There's one word. Just one word. How can you take infinity and say, describe infinity for me, describe the divine for me. What is it? And John says, I can tell you that. God is.